Can I explain how we know each other?
Yes, let's do that.
We have a mutual friend named Tim Carvel.
Yes.
I've known him longer. It's not a competition, but if it were, I would win.
Yes.
And Tim was a magazine writer, just brilliant and funny, and I kept saying, you should write for TV. And eventually he got a job on The Daily Show, and I would stop by and visit him. And at the time, he had this weird office mate who, when I walked in, he would just nod, and then he would sit with his back to me, and Tim and I would visit like there was an invisible wall, and that weird office mate.
It was me.
That was you.
It was me. Yeah.
I didn't even know you were British for like the first year.
I'm not. I'm just so deeply in character I can't get out again. I was born in the Bronx in 1954. So what I wanted to start off by was actually talking about your mum, because that was the first time on the when I was reading this on the plane this afternoon. That was the first time, again, rereading. There was just some world-class parenting, just in general, that she gave you. But I think my favorite, this is a really illustrative moment of how to bring up a child, was you writing here, at my 3rd grade parent-teacher conference, the teacher complained that I made too many jokes during class. She asked my mother to talk to me about toning it down. My mother said she passed the message along, and she did on my 40th birthday. She waited 32 years until I was an established comedy writer to tell me that my 3rd grade teacher had notes on my personality. That is a pretty good example of how to parent, isn't it? Just act sometimes as a sponge and say, you don't need to hear that shit right now.
She was remarkably supportive, and I tell another story about Meryl Marco asking me to contribute an essay about having a narcissistic mother to a collection, and I said, well, why did you think that? And she said, well, you know, a lot of funny women have narcissistic moms, and I truly had the nicest, warmest mom, but I felt a little guilty saying that to Meryl.
How much like was comedy like a feature of your like day-to-day interaction as a kid? Like, did you use it the way that like lots of people do as basically, I say lots of people, again, I'm talking about people in Britain, we like to use it as a defense mechanism to stop any kind of natural engagement taking place. Were you always looking for a joke when you were a kid in terms of any interactions?
Well, my whole family was funny.
Right.
My father was funny, and my aunts were funny. There's this great story about my Aunt Pinky who was passing by my sister Alice, who was on the couch reading Little Women, and she just tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Don't get too attached to Beth." And
solid, Aunt Pinky, solid. Yeah.
And there was a darkness, and Aunt Jane was one of the best dirty joke tellers. I mean, she loved opera, she loved ballet. She was this very cultured woman who also loved telling fart jokes.
Right.
Which was the best. And they both got positive reinforcement, a lot of positive attention for being funny. So it never occurred to me that women couldn't be funny.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, I know.
You would fucking hope not. Yeah. I know. That probably doesn't occur to anyone until they're taught it, that, right? I don't think you naturally see 2 or 3-year-old boys seeing a girl do something funny and say, nah, I don't know, I would prefer it if James did that.
Well, you know, Kurt Vonnegut just boiled it down to 7 words. Some people are funny, some are not.
Right. Yeah, that's basically the case, isn't it? When you, like, if you traffic in the language of, if it's valued in your home, it's probably a currency that you're going to want to trade in to some extent. So I want to talk about mentors first, because first let's talk about mentors that you had, and then I think it'd be worth people knowing the extent to which you have passed that on, mentoring other people. So who do you think, who are the key mentors comedically for you? Because you talk about a couple in here.
Right. Well, Barry Kemp, who created both Newhart and Coach, hired me to work on Coach for 3 seasons, and he really taught me how to write a sitcom. And he gave great advice. He's the one who taught me that writing is not an act of creation, it's an act of discovery. And you know, ideas don't just come out of your head full-blown perfect. You workshop them, and
Right.
you try things, and you go down different paths, and if you hit a dead end, you go back and start again.
I love the way that you put it like an ophthalmologist. Basically, when you're redrafting jokes, it's just about, right, better? How about now?
Yeah.
How about now?
Is that better? Is that better?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I love about this book is you've basically kept everything over the years in terms of correspondence and notes for everything. So there's so much kind of primary source correspondence with people that were giving you really important advice as you were going through some tough times.
Well, now someone said to me, well, did you hold on to this stuff because you thought someday you would write a book? That would be a very confident person. It was actually the exact opposite, which is I thought TV would go away at any moment, and I wanted proof that I'd worked on these shows.
Yeah.
So I held on to all my scripts and all my notes.
Well, who was the first person that you made laugh and you thought, or I don't know, this is maybe just like transposing my own experience,
Yeah.
but did you ever have a moment where you made someone you really respected laugh and you thought, oh, maybe I can do this, even if it was just that?
Not my third grade teacher.
Right, yeah.
You know, when I wrote this script and for It's Gary Shandling's show, and they flew me to LA to get notes on it, and Gary stopped by the office and said, "You write like a guy." And, you know, at the time, that was the highest compliment.
That's right. But I mean, he meant that as an extreme compliment, right? It was
Well,
in
I
the
think
way
he meant I wrote hard jokes.
Yeah.
You know, and I wrote jokes where his friend comes over and Gary's working in the kitchen and the friend says, "Do you need an extra pair of hands?" And Gary says, "That would double my sex life."
Yeah.
So-
That's a hard joke in every sense of the word, isn't it? It was. I love that line where one of your colleagues at Spy said, "I don't mean this as an insult, but I think you could write for TV." Which that kind of was the window that opened you up to a whole new world, though, because it wasn't much longer after that you were sending scripts to Gary Shandling.
I grew up in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, very New England, and you know, the only sense I had that people wrote for television was the Dick Van Dyke Show, which had been in black and white, so I didn't think people had done it since. And I just wasn't aware you could write for TV.
Right. Get that Tim Carvel, our friend, also had that same kind of experience, though, because he was growing up in Michigan, and there didn't seem to be a pathway to how it was possible for a person to go from living their life in a non-Hollywood manner, and then all of a sudden finding yourself in a Hollywood studio being paid for your work. Do you think that's one of the key problems, that people just can't picture a path that's going to take them where they want to go?
I think it's changed. I think back then we didn't have this cult of the showrunner. Like that, there wasn't even a word. The term showrunner came about because so many managers started piling in as executive producers that you needed a word to...
oh, really?
Yeah.
So they just devalued the term
It used to be the
EP.
executive producer was the showrunner, and then...
Oh, I didn't know that. They had to
that.
come up with a new term because they completely fucked up the old one.
That's right. And they could have called all those people do-nothings.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But-
Instead, they just changed the term. That's
Yeah.
great. As part of it, even in your example of the Gary Shandling story, you talk about like finishing your draft, it being put in an envelope and then flown away. Do you think part access has become easier for people just by dint of the fact that they can be found online in a way that it was much harder for you to be found in New England, the newest England, of course, old England?
Yeah.
Anyway, we don't need to get into that. It was harder to be found before your voice could carry online.
It was, and you absolutely needed to know one person
Right.
in the business.
Right.
And I just knew one person through a mutual friend from college whose name is Rob Lizebnik, and he still writes on The Simpsons now. And he offered to send my script to an agent who passed it along. But today, it's easier to meet those people because you can go on Twitter or LinkedIn and reach out. And it's how I found Jill Twist on Twitter.
So when we were starting the show, we asked Nell for help finding people that were funny, because not just so that we weren't going to get the fire hose of agents giving us the same old shit, or some not shit. And so, Nell, you had actively been monitoring people that you found funny online. And that was, thank you for that.
Laurie Kilmartin, who's this wonderful writer on Conan, had clued me in on this funny woman named Jill Twist, and I read her jokes, which are like, bananas are so clicky.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for gluten-free pigeons.
Yeah, that's a great joke. Sorry for them, and also slightly irritated, because is it celiac pigeons, or you're just feeling a bit bloated today?
So I DM'd her, and I said, have you ever thought of writing for TV? And she did some stand-up, and she was tutoring in SATs, and she said, sure. But you read your submissions blind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do read them blind, but then we do. It feels important to do that, but then so that you need to kind of still thumb the scale underneath that, right? You need to make sure that what you're reading blind is more representative than the natural sample that the current system would give you. That's the problem, right?
Right. And Jill wrote your new book.
That's right. Jill is also an author as of Sunday night. Yeah, Jill wrote the Rabbit book. So right, you've both written books. Yeah. You've both. But Jill's here? Oh, Julie's. Julie, who also you helped us find. Jill's here. Where's Jill?
We can't see.
Jill is, I think, sinking deeply into her chair now, going, physically I'm here, emotionally I left 20 seconds ago. Oh, Julie, you helped us find as well, Julie Wiener. Julie's here. Julie, stand up. Fuck you, stand up. You're going to try and throw Jill under the bus. But I guess
Julie was at Vanity Fair, and I used the same line on her, which was, I don't mean this as an insult, but I think you could write for television.
I can't just gloss over the facts. That cards are being handed out with what looks like tiny silver buckets. Is this... I don't know exactly what's happening, but I definitely like it.
They're to write questions.
Yes.
But if anyone was going to stand up and pitch their entire movie and then ask a question like, do you think that would work? Just make sure you write the whole plot down on the card.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank
Freehand.
you.
But I guess, so that advice you had of, I don't mean this is an insult, but you could write in TV, you have been giving people that advice at length over the last decade, right?
Right.
Thank you for that.
I tried it on Alexandra Petrie, who's this writer at the Washington Post. She's hilarious. And she said she actually was insulted, I think.
Really?
She's like, no, I'm very happy here.
Great. Writers, let's talk a little bit about writers' rooms, because you've been in a lot of them, and they've mostly produced incredible content, but they've probably been functional to varying degrees of success. The Simpsons, right, that must have been an incredible, not just room to be in, but an incredible time to be there, because it was pretty early on.
Right, it was the second season. I watched the premiere on TV, and I loved it so much. I called my agent at home, which is something I've never done since, and said, I want to work on the show. And he was like, really? And I said, I think it could be something. And he was like, I think it will be off soon. So I got a freelance assignment for the second season. At that time, there weren't a lot of writers who wanted to work for this weird-ass, garish cartoon. And I went in and pitched 2 ideas. And one was Homer eats blowfish and thinks he's going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I had no idea that you'd written that. It's one of my favorite episodes.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. It was. There was a really great story in here about, I guess, what particularly happens in writers' rooms, because there's amazing glimpses of jokes that didn't get into things, and drafts that didn't make it, so you get a sense of what you ideally had seen for something, and then maybe how it turned out. And also, you get a sense of the jokes that probably shouldn't have made it, but were really enjoyable at the time. Because there was the darkest stuff often is just because, Colbert once called it like the escalation of shock in a writer's room, that there are things that happen in there that probably should never see the light of day. But I loved that line.
The Grandpa Simpson line?
Oh my God, that line was great. So if you don't know the episode, right, you describe what happens.
Homer eats blowfish and thinks he's going to die.
Oh, you did, that's right.
No, he has 24 hours to live, and he makes a bucket list.
Yeah.
And sadly, the end of Act 2 is he gets thrown in jail because he's speeding on his way home to Marge and the kids. And the third act is this race against time. He's got to get home. There's a little parody of The Graduate in there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's going to be poisoned for me forever. But there was one glimpse that you put in there of someone wrote the joke for Grandpa Simpson, which was too dark to get in, but I really loved it, of him looking at Homer and saying, "I know the greatest tragedy is to outlive your children, but it doesn't feel so bad." Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh, even the fact that that was pitched as a joke for a network sitcom. That was pretty amazing. I guess, was there any sense of people fighting for that joke, or was that one of the moments where...
Oh, we knew.
Sometimes, sorry, go on.
Well, it is that thing, if you are a comedy writer and no one's ever said you've gone too far, then you probably haven't gone far enough.
Yeah.
And if they constantly say you've gone too far, you're an asshole.
We had that. I can't remember what the joke was. We had that this Sunday when we found one joke really funny, and Liz Stanton, our EP, real EP, not bullshit EP. She was laughing really hard. I think innately we knew that we couldn't, I wish I could remember what it was. We knew that it was not fit for human consumption. And she was still laughing, and then we said, yeah, we can't do it though. And she said, oh yeah, because of people. You went, yeah, that's right. That's right. Because of people. The group that we don't currently belong to.
We did have a whiteboard dedicated at Murphy Brown to the lost laughs of Murphy Brown.
Oh, really?
And yeah, if you really loved a joke that you couldn't convince people to put in the show, you could write it on that board.
Oh, that's great. There was, there was a story I was going to tell there, and then I thought better of it. Because of people. We'll talk about it later. Did Mother Teresa really speak at your graduation?
She absolutely did.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and she told all the women that the greatest gift you could give your husband was your virginity. and I was like, where was she freshman week?
Oh my God. Oh, how many people laughed at that? Not.
I think, I don't know.
Oh, what else did she talk about?
Oh,
What was the message, or was it just I've mainly come to say virginity's the key?
Yeah.
That's amazing. There's a really wonderful moment where you describe, I guess, how a laugh feels to you as a writer, and I wonder if that spoke at all to the kind of addiction of deciding to write comedy, because this is how you describe a laugh. You say, laughter is a sign of impact. That impact may be fleeting. A laugh may be over in the wink of a president's eye, but for me, that moment is bliss. And that really stuck with me, because I guess, when did you realize that laughter to you was like crack that you were going to chase in some form for the rest of your life?
Oh, I don't. There's that great quote from 1,000 Clowns by Herb Gardner, which is, if things aren't funny, then they're just what they are, and then life's just a long dental appointment. So I think, you know, it was always like, what's the twist? How can we find the laugh in this?
But you never wanted to do stand-up. I guess that's... Why is that? Why did you...
Oh, now I just became self-conscious that I'm on stage.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, why did you do that?
Yeah, well, you're objectively funny. Comedy is subjective, but not when it comes to you, Nell.
Well, one of the reasons, actually, I did want to write this is there are so many great books by, you know, Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and Amy Schumer and Mindy Kaling, and they're performers, and a lot of us want to be funny, but don't want to be front and center.
Because you've written for characters that you've created, but you've also written for Letterman and for President Obama. Like, how have you found writing for other people's voices, even if you didn't particularly find them funny? How do you decide, I'm going to need to get 60% of Nell in here into someone else's voice?
Well, the craft is figuring out what their voice is. And, you know, Letterman was a really easy voice for me. It's cranky old man. Inside me, there is a cranky old man.
Yeah, definitely.
But not inside me.
Yeah, well,
And now, President Obama was fun to write for because he's a sitcom character.
Right.
He's the leader of the free world who lives with his mother-in-law, right? I mean, I always thought, like, this is a guy who doesn't always get what he wants, although he's the most powerful man on the planet.
Yeah.
And so that seemed like a fun thing to play with.
And you wrote for him for years.
Well, for the White House Correspondents' Dinner and the Al Smith dinner.
I guess he was slightly unusual as a politician. In that lots of presidents have been funny. You could even, as difficult as it is to say out loud, Trump is not. Here's the thing. There's the caveats here. He is a funny man outside of before all of this happened.
Yeah.
He knows where laughs are in a sentence, right? He knows how to make people laugh. What he was weirdly less good at is actually telling jokes at that Al Smith dinner, because what he was telling there sometimes were not even anything resembling a joke. It was just being mean.
Well, he had one good joke about how he didn't get it that Michelle Obama gave a speech and everyone loved it, and then Melania gave the speech and nobody did. And that was a good joke, but then he just devolved, remember, into Hillary hates Catholics.
Yeah, even that, because that was a good joke, but I feel like he only felt it worked because there was spousal abuse underneath it. I think we were laughing at that for two different reasons. He was getting to bully his wife on stage, and he thought, that's funny, isn't it? And it makes it slightly less
humiliation is hilarious.
He likes that.
But I argue in the book that he does have a sense of humor. I just think it's Schadenfreude with a laugh track. Remember he did that video of him swinging the golf club and it knocking Hillary over? Like, I think that's his idea of a joke. Yeah. Yeah, so mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you go about getting yourself into, like, the President Obama voice? Because I guess he does have that, you know he could actually land a written joke that you gave him.
Right, and in the book, Albert Brooks describes his delivery as like Carson's.
Right.
And it's very Johnny Carson. He'll repeat funny words. You know, it's mostly situational for him. I wrote one joke for the Al Smith dinner, which Mitt Romney was also present at, and Obama says, you know, Mitt Romney and I have a lot in common. We both went to Harvard. We both have wonderful wives. We both have weird names. Actually, Mitt is his middle name. I wish I could use my middle name.
Yeah. I loved that Matt Damon joke was an objectively incredible joke that was made even better by the fact it was the President of the United States bullying him. So there were some unused jokes that you submitted to President Obama that's in here.
Yeah. Would you guys like to hear John read them?
Yes.
Yeah.
These were ones that President Obama did
Chose
use.
not to do.
And so, in a distant second place, a British person who can never be president constitutionally unless the Queen really comes back in a big way here.
Right now, we'd love that.
Yeah, that's... Wow, careful. Careful.
Oh, really?
Somewhere in London, her ears just pricked up. Saying, Corgis, charge! Okay, so let's see what you think. I'm not going to do this as an impression because I do not have the performance skills. Welcome.
No.
I know many of you came tonight to see the charismatic leader of North America, but Justin Trudeau just couldn't make it. Good, decent joke. Decent joke. He probably should have done that. I turned 50 while in office, which meant I had to have my first colonoscopy, and guess what they found? Mitch McConnell.
Wait.
That guy can obstruct anything. What? Why the fuck would he not do that joke? That works on every level. That's both a joke and just a fact. The Republicans are working hard to change the Constitution. They want to shorten the First Amendment to Congress shall make no law. That's it. Now, you wrote in here, Congress shall make no law, beat, that's it. Did you write that in for him as if to say,
yes.
You gotta...
Yeah, I was ordering around the leader of the free world. No, there's one joke I wrote for him included a punchline which was just a wink to the camera. So for a millisecond, I was the most powerful person on the planet.
It's pretty amazing. And you didn't know which of these were going to be used at all, right?
Well, we would get a script on this Saturday morning, so...
Oh, but there was, I guess the thing that I was excited about was that one Matt Damon joke, which I loved.
Oh,
that
yeah.
You weren't sure he was going to do that until he started the setup.
Well, can you read the Matt Damon joke? I think it's a few pages.
Where is it? Yeah, I can read it. I can.
Hold on.
Just wait.
It's...
Is it a few pages
It's
backwards
right
or
here.
forwards? It's so good. Oh, yeah, okay. So this is 2011, he said this. I've even let down my core constituency, movie stars. Just the other day, Matt Damon. I love Matt Damon. Love the guy. Matt Damon said he was disappointed in my performance. Well, Matt, I just saw the Adjustment Bureau, so right back at you, buddy. That's so good. That's so good.
So that morning, Jon Favreau, who's the nicest guy and the best writer, who's the speechwriter, not the director.
He's also fine. It seems like you're really throwing Jon Favreau, the director.
Oh, yeah,
You were saying the nice guy, not like Jon Favreau, the director of The Lion King, who's a piece of shit. Jon Favreau, the speechwriter. Yeah.
The good one.
Yeah.
And he wrote me that morning and said, I'm not sure the president's, or POTUS, as I call him, POTUS is going to do that joke. He thinks it's not very nice. And I wrote back, I've seen the Adjustment Bureau, truth is a defense.
Yeah. I was quite annoyed by his response to that. Just thinks it's not very nice. Yeah, that's why it's funny.
Yeah.
That's why you should say it if you want to hear a really big laugh. Anyway, I get that he was juggling other things in his life at the time. It's just, to me, the most important moment in that point would have been the joke. So he says, so here's another one. If Trump wins, he'll get the nuclear code. I'll give him a hint now. It's the same number that's on my Kenyan birth certificate. Again, context has slightly changed that, of course, because we're all staring into the abyss. And yet, the joke's strong enough that it's still technically funny. People ask me who I'd like to see as our next president, which is touchy. It's a little like asking who I want to see as Michelle's next husband. I mean, come on, man, I'm still doing the job. Good. Very good. After all these years, I'm really getting used to living where I work. So post-presidency, Michelle and I are starting to think we may open a bed and breakfast. We're not sure where, but we've already got the name, and then the slide. There it is.
There we go.
And also, This, what a lovely example of how key timing is in comedy. What else did I have here? I wanted to go back a little bit to...
No, you can't go back.
Yeah, to the mental question, because I guess
yeah.
Arthur Penn was so incredible to you when you were having trouble on a movie set. Do you want to kind of just set up just exactly what was going wrong there?
Well, I'll set up too that so I meet Arthur Penn back in the late 80s because he directs this movie, Penn and Teller Get Killed, and I'm assigned, I'm writing for Rolling Stone, and they assign me an article, and I say in the book, you know, I started this interview with Arthur, and it lasted, 30 years. So we were friends, and I get this directing job, and I write to him and said, will you help me? And it's a little like asking Serena Williams to teach her 5-year-old how to play tennis. Right. But if she's willing, why not?
Yeah.
And he just gave me this wonderful advice, and it was a difficult crew, and
they sounded like assholes. Is that because they were assholes, Nell?
If my lawyers hadn't told me specifically
not
to say certain things, no, I would.
It's just they sounded like assholes.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, in my opinion, that's because they probably exhibited assholey behaviour. But I guess, look, you were writing back and forth with Arthur.
Yeah.
And there was this one email that he sent to you. I guess it was his third point that really got to me. He said, close down the field of discussion, keep it specific. Your concern is the sufficiency of exterior shots. Okay, let's review those. Walk me through the movie, reframe that. Don't let it be about shots. Talk tone, mood, atmosphere, the ineffable that distinguishes you, the director. And then he says, sorry if this sounds paternalistic, not my intention. The director's role is mysterious, personal, and must not be reduced only to hardware and its function. There is a quotient of poetry that is not describable. It's in the doing. Love you, Nell. And I guess it seemed like it was the perfect balance of really brisk, practical advice, a pep talk, having your back in terms of saying that these people may or may not be arseholes, and then just saying he loved you. That seems like I was so glad that you kept most of these pieces of correspondence exactly, because it was amazing being able to get into his head and into your head at that time.
Well, it's in the doing is the key to making something.
Have you found, again, like with talking about mentorship, have you found that people exposing their appalling experiences and sharing in them somehow bolsters your ability to get through them because you don't feel so alone? Because that seemed to me to be what was happening there. He was kind of giving you a window into, I'll tell you exactly what a nightmare cruise can be. Yeah. You're not the first one going through this, and so you will be able to navigate your way out of it. Right.
So having issues with the DP, the director of photography, and you take it personally. And then I wrote to Arthur and said, what do I do? And he told me about on his first movie set, he had come from the theater and he wanted to shoot 2 cameras at the same time. And the DP told him, you can't do that. That's not how we make movies. And I think he called him a parvenu. I'm not even sure what that means.
Yeah, neither am I.
And in the end, they wrote on the slate, shot under duress.
Yeah.
And Arthur's a visionary. He directed Bonnie and Clyde, Little Big Man, starring Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, Jesus
I don't know if you've
Christ,
ever met
Nell.
him. And
fucking hell. He has been in a lot of stuff.
Maybe
he's done nothing wrong.
No, but it did make me feel better, because you realize it's not, sometimes it has to do with the position, not the person.
Do you feel like the most lasting lessons that have been most useful to you have been from good experiences or bad experiences, or just a combination of the two?
When I started writing this, I thought, well, this is going to be fun to, get back at people who weren't nice to me. And as you start writing, you go, you know what? I want to think about the good things and the people who were kind and the people who helped, and actually let the other stuff fall away.
But it's interesting you say that, but it seems to me that you're kind of almost biologically incapable of not putting a joke in within like 3 sentences. Because even in some of the most painful moments in this book, there's a pretty big joke on its way. So one of the hardest I laughed is just after you've been assaulted in here. And there's a really strong joke that I don't want to spoil for people, because it's worth reading the appalling assault that Nell suffered to get to what was a really solid punch.
Me too. You know, when I wrote it this summer, I was very fearful, and when all these stories started breaking in the fall, I was like, get this out. I want to be part of that chorus.
It is amazing, because
Yeah.
I first read this before any of the Me Too, right? It was just, so I was reading this thinking, holy shit.
Yeah.
You are taking some big swings here. This will be interesting. And I guess it is overwhelmingly a good thing that this is now being released in the context of many other swings.
It seems a little tame now compared. I mean, it's one of my concerns that, you've got Cosby and Weinstein raising the bar to the point where, no, seriously, if a man doesn't rape 10 women, he's a gentleman. So you can go up to 9 women, but it's the 10th woman that you can't rape.
I think as long as the boundaries are made clear.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. He really was an innovator, Cosby, in every way, wasn't he? How? Did you, like, in the writing of this overall, did you do a pass to joke it up, or were you mindful of tone during it? Because it is constantly funny, and I realise I say that as someone who may be medically dead inside, but it is funny all the time, even when you're saying really brutal things and being incredibly honest.
Well, I'm an iterator, and so I went over and over and definitely punched up, and I had funny friends read it and suggest jokes too, and I really wanted it to be funny, because I do think one of the things I want is for men to read this book.
Yeah.
And to, come for the Simpsons, stay for the feminism. Because for so much of my career, I was a sports writer.
Yeah.
I love science fiction. I really was a great culture fit for these mostly male rooms, and tried to blend in. And they say they dress for the job you want. I dressed like a little boy and just kind of sat in the corner and hoped they wouldn't notice me.
You wanted to be a Dickensian orphan, is that what you say? So.
Please, sir. Oh, that's...
It's okay when I do it.
Yeah, I know, I realize that.
That's actually not okay. That's not all right. It's very easy to slip into, and that really rolled off your tongue there, Nell. Yeah, but was there a moment, because I guess to go back to that Blowfish episode, I really was interested in the back and forth between you wanting to go out on a joke and then the notes that they were giving saying, let's let this moment
be sincere.
Yeah, or you'd written, like, Marge writes a poem to Homer to read.
Do you want to, should we read
yeah,
them?
That's
Can
a
we
good
find
idea.
it?
Yeah, let's find it. Is there an index? Hold on. Here we go. I'll get it. The Simpsons.
Here it is.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so this was, it's that amazing moment in the episode where, so they're about to go to sleep, right? And she...
Oh, can I set up, though?
Yes.
So Homer breaks out of prison. He races home. On his list is be intimate with Marge one last time. And my original pitch is he races up, grabs Marge, and then you cut to them both staring at the ceiling, and she says, well, it's understandable. You're under a lot of stress. The men in the room did not like this joke.
It's because it would be understandable. He was under a lot of stress, Nell.
And
Jesus Christ, give him a break.
And that's when someone said, well, maybe Marge could read him a poem. So here's what I wrote. Here's my first draft.
Yeah. So this was the first draft was Marge saying this is the poem. The blackened clouds are forming, soon the rain will fall. My dear one is departing, but first, please heed this call. That always will I love you. Da 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 da. Sorry, I didn't have time to finish the couplet. Yeah, that's like what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to, like, you start a sentence, you're supposed to finish it with a joke.
Yeah.
And
sometimes when you write, you go, oh, that's good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's good.
Exactly. And then...
Undercut the treacle.
Right, exactly. And then, here is the comparison of Marge's poem in the writer's draft, so on the left, and this was the dialogue that aired. The blackened clouds are forming, soon the rain will fall. My dear one is departing, but first, please heed this call. That always will I love you, my one, my love, my all. And that was it.
Yeah.
And I guess the interesting thing for me about both of those examples, both that poem and the staring at the ceiling, it happens to everyone joke, is that those are objectively funnier, right?
Yeah.
Because like that's a really great joke, but I guess it was like addition by subtraction. That's one of the things I guess we love about The Simpsons, that sometimes they will sacrifice a joke to make you actually feel something.
And it's became this far more complicated moment where you just feel bad because a cartoon character is about to die.
Yeah, and what were the variations of the ending as well? Because you had written, God, what was it? Right.
So there are two things that are fun. Homer goes downstairs, and there was always this problem of how does Marge discover that he's still alive? And Jim Brooks, who co-created the show and is just a genius, came up with this wonderful moment where Marge comes down, and at first she rushes to him, and she reaches up. She thinks he's dead. He's slumped in his chair and says, oh, homie. And then she touches his face, and she says, his drool is warm. He's alive. He's alive. Which is so human and lovely. Throughout the episode, Homer believes he's going to die, so he's telling Flanders that he's going to bring juicy steaks. And he tells off Mr. Burns, his boss, and he tells his father that he loves him and promises they'll play hacky sack together.
Yeah.
And the original tag was all these storylines coming back to haunt him, where, you know, Flanders wants to know where you are with the steaks, your father called, he wants to get together, Mr. Burns called, you're fired. And Homer gets more and more trouble till finally Marge says, you know, you're glad you're alive, aren't you, Homer? And he's like, not so sure. But the tag was too long, and so they shortened it to Homer says, from this time forward, I'll live every day to the fullest. And then you cut to him on the couch watching bowling and eating pork rinds.
Yeah, but it's amazing how impactful that was, because I can still hear, because all you hear is the sound of the sound of the bowling, right?
Yeah.
You hear the pins, you call them pins, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So do we. We're not so different. You just hear the clink clack, and it just goes on and on. It was. There's so many parts of that. I should go fuck myself.
I think we know who wrote that.
Okay, so we have some of your questions here from the wonderful silver bucket. Who is your favourite Muppet and why? Nell wrote for the Muppets.
Yeah, well, for the most recent iteration, Miss Piggy, she's the biggest star in all the world.
And you wrote an amazing storyline for her as well.
Well, one of my first days on the show, I went up to Bill Beretta, who directs a lot of the Muppet stuff and also does a lot of the voices. And I said, does Miss Piggy have a tail? And he said, I suppose so. Yes. And I said, have we ever seen it? And he said, no. And I said, could we see it? And he said, sure. So I had an idea, which is Piggy's on the red carpet for a movie premiere, and her tail pops out of her dress.
Yeah.
So she has this wardrobe malfunction.
Yeah. And there's a headline on a tabloid newspaper going, Miss Piggy goes full barnyard.
Full barnyard.
Awesome.
In the New York Post.
It's amazing how much.
And I added to canon. That was
Yes,
the thing
exactly.
that I was so happy about.
Yeah. It's amazing how the Muppets, as people who grew up loving comedy, right, how impactful they are. I remember Kristen Schall's husband, Rich Blomquist, who wrote for The Daily Show for years, when she was in the first Muppet movie, he went to the set and he met Fozzie Bear, and he was going to go and talk to him just to say, oh, thanks for, you made me like jokes for the first time.
Yeah.
And so he was kind of going half doing it seriously and hadn't got through this first sentence before he started crying. Fozzie, I just want to say, just the timing and the jokes, I loved it. Here's another question. You said your aunt told great fart jokes. Do you have a favourite? Or was it situational stuff with your aunt?
No, let's see if I'll do it justice. There are two women who, where should I set it? They're at a department store. And one woman holds out her wrist and says, Chanel number 5, 85 cents. Hold out her, I haven't told this joke in 40 years, or I haven't thought about it. All right, I'll tell a different one.
Okay.
A little boy's in class, and he raises his hand, and the teacher says yes, and the boy says, do farts have lumps? And the teacher says, no, Jimmy, farts do not have lumps. And he says, then I definitely shat in my pants.
Again,
I'll tell that one.
There's something innately funny about Breaking Wind, and I think I know this has to be true, because I have a 2-year-old son, and he was about 18 months old, and I was changing him, and I think it was the first time he heard himself fart. It was quite loud.
Yeah.
And he farted, and he looked up at me and he went, that's not learned behavior, that's objectively funny. It's a funny sound from a funny place.
Were you like, we don't laugh at scatological humor in this house? Yeah.
This says, is it hard to be funny all the time? It's impossible, right? Unless you're a psychopath. Know. Yeah. Which Simpson character best resembles you? Or what was your best career move?
Oh. Asking John Oliver to moderate this is the best career move. Which Simpson characters like me? One of my favorite episodes was The Substitute Teacher, where he hands her the sheet that says, you are Lisa Simpson, played by Dustin Hoffman. The ghost of Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, God.
Haunting you.
How do we change the bro culture of writers' rooms, or brackets of some writers' rooms?
Okay, it's not actually that complicated. It can be solved in 3 words: hire more women.
Right.
I did it! I did it!
It's not, yeah. Is grad school a waste of time? Well, I get the sense that some people in this room are really invested in your answer.
Did a parent or a grad school student ask this question?
It says for TV specifically, I mean.
Oh.
What do you think? What do you think the answer to that is?
Everyone takes a different route, so I don't know.
Do you think yes, though? What are you going to learn at grad school to be a writer?
Yeah.
Unless you're writing all the time. It's like you say in the book, really writing is something you just have to do.
Yeah.
I love the best. I hope it's not here. I'm just checking that the worst question you could possibly be asked is not here. No, it's not.
Okay.
So, yeah, when people say,
where do you get your ideas?
and your answer is,
Oh,
It's the same as asking people,
how do you grow your hair?
yeah, exactly.
It
It's
just happens.
yeah, stuff
They
comes
come
out.
out of your head.
Exactly. What's your advice for a young woman aspiring to go into a male-dominated field? Oh, brackets, and she's a little scared.
And she's
And she's a little scared.
well, she's feeling the right thing.
Right.
And to, you can't, now I'm going to be sincere.
Yeah.
It's like, don't let your fears overwhelm your desires.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's...
it's not funny.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think that's a really, really good point, though, because even during the introduction, she said I was fearless, which couldn't be biologically further from the truth.
Yeah.
I'm not a brave human being, but my desires, I think there are times when I've seemed fearless, it's only because I want the thing more than I want to be scared.
That's right.
Yeah, so
And
that's great advice.
The other piece of advice is it should be the easiest thing in the world to try something new. Because if you do it and succeed, that's great. And if you do it and fail, you had the perfect excuse. I've never done it before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
why not try it?
I guess it's not clear. What's your advice for a young woman to go into a male-dominated field? I'm hoping this isn't the NFL. Because then my answer would be, don't do that.
Yeah.
It seems like there are some real problems there. What is your favorite Dorothy Parker quote? Or any favorite quote at all, it says. Wow, that got broad at the end. Yeah.
No, my favorite one is actually something, I'm going to go with something Robert Benchley said to Dorothy Parker, who had a miscarriage, and he supposedly said to her, "That's what you get for putting all your eggs in one bastard." And I just thought, like, I don't think I could have been friends with him.
People, Nell.
I know.
Oh, that was the last. And then, we're just at the reminder.
Wow.
That was it. The reminder is that Nell will be signing just the funny parts afterwards, or you'll sign any books, right? Any books you have with you. I can't thank you enough for being here. I love this book so much. It's so great. Nell Scovell, ladies and gentlemen.